all of these mind control programs that are out there that were created, invented, like white supremacy was an invention, no different than inventing the toaster or something like that. Whatever it was, it's an invention to have an effect. Toasters were invented to toast your bread, and white supremacy was invented to do whatever it's doing now, what it did back then and what it's doing now. That was the intention behind that invention. So, what are the intentions behind regenerating the way you perceive time? What are the effects of an invention of a clock that is designed off of an illusion? So you have the heliocentric universe that gives you your time, even how old you think you are, whatever even that means. Because when you take it all out of the context that they want you to be trapped within, instead of understanding the relationship that you have to the sun and the moon and those cycles and what that is in relation to the earth and balances and harmonics and frequencies and all that, you have shrunk it down to, and I've heard this, oh, well, you're 35 now. Oh, that means you've made 35 trips around the sun. And people are like, I'm smart for knowing that. Like, what? That's what's going on with how we perceive our universe, how we relate with each other. And when you understand that to be a total invention, an illusion, you can understand that the intent there shockwaves all the way up through the soul. It surpasses your physical experience. Like it locks you in with jobs, work. You know, you got to go to your 9 to 5, work 40 hours a week. You're 22 years old. You should be graduating from college. You're 25. You should be married by now. You should be working on getting a house and getting married and having kids and that whole thing. Oh, you're 55 now. You should be looking at, living here, or your entire life is set out there for you by who? That's my question. And that who is, what are those values of those who's? So in relation to how values and relates to consciousness and how consciousness relates to time, you can understand that time flies when you're having fun and time slows down when you're not. So does this mean time is actually speeding up and slowing down? What is time? That's the bigger question. So is time speeding up? No. What is time? Well, it's not based upon what the sun is doing or what we are doing around the sun. It's based upon you. It's based upon your consciousness. So if that's the case, then what happens when you are constantly flying in the spaces of having fun, in quotation marks, or love? Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're in love or surrounded by people that you love, like you're having a good time. But when you are surrounded by muck and sickness and disease and all of the systems that are normal today, we call normal today, we can see how that intent is designed to have a particular effect, not only on us physically, but our consciousness, our thought, the bridge between your physical reality and your non-physical reality, or the consciousness. So you have the bridge is being locked down by these trolls or this university system who invented this illusion, this parasitic consciousness that lives underneath this bridge. It lives underneath the minds of people, so that if anybody goes onto that bridge, they're not going where they think they're going, or their intuition is guiding them to go. They are going wherever you go when you graduate from high school, wherever you go when you graduate from college. You're going where the system tells you to go. The trolls. Make no mistake about it, this system is run by trolls, by entities that live from the perspective of a parasitic consciousness that is designed to suck you in and slow down your consciousness so slow, so beneath the norm, that all of the extra energy that's involved in you just being here is then vampired by these parasites that largely exist in the non-physical reality, because those are the frequencies, the higher frequencies, just out of this physical reality frequency, that kind of send these little poisonous breadcrumbs. They drop poisonous breadcrumbs through the bridge of the mind, from the non-physical reality through the bridge of the mind to be available for the physical body, or the physical mind, to pick up and follow those breadcrumbs. So it's not them or they that's doing anything. It's the people who are so far from their own power that they follow breadcrumbs from trolls who don't have any concern for their well-being so much. It's so far beyond that. They don't even consider you to be anything worth living. Ultimately, look at this image. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. So these are these values. This is why I said in the last video, if you're like a Trump follower, or even following TYT and Alex Jones, these are all people who are trying to protect this parasitic system. I just saw a video that was posted a few hours ago on TYT talking about who's going to run for 2020. There are these two people who I've seen before, and then Bernie Sanders right in the middle, and all of it was about Bernie Sanders, and they're talking about, oh, he's going to be the best bet, this is that, and then you're just listening to these zombies pretty much just put out there like, oh, well, what's going to happen next time? What are we going to do next time? First of all, you are not doing anything. The system is not giving you a vote so you can cast your vote to see who's going to contend against Donald Trump. No, you're living in an illusion. And when you believe in that shit, you're making the people who watch that believe in that illusion too. So TYT is designed to keep you in that trap of the aggressive, progressive illusion, trust in a system that has zero concern for you at all. And then the same thing goes for Alex Jones. He just gets you hooked from a more conspiracy perspective, or whatever it is. It's a distraction. No different than the mainstream media. It's just a more complex version of the mainstream media. So if you can understand that, most people already get that, but I just wanted to emphasize that, to share with people, because some people are not getting that. Some people are still like holding on to those last like poisonous threads of that system, thinking that, oh, the system can be changed. Like, no, the system, if the system changes at all, it will not be because the people, it won't be for the better. It'll be to sell in another mind control program, more than likely 10, 20, 30 years down the line. So you can't see how it's existing today. So the thing with the values and going back to consciousness and all that other stuff, the thing with these systems is that they break it down. They sell you elementary school, and then they tell you, hey, this is your doctorate's program. That's what the capitalist, so-called democratic, physical, like technological based mainstream society is based upon. They got to build themselves up because they've maxed out. They know they've maxed out years ago with this whole technology, industrial age, all that. They knew when they were coming up with the industrial age and starting to put together radios and TVs. They knew back in the 20s and 30s like what was going to be in the future, which is why Tesla was taken out, because they had two options. They said, we can release a lot of this information and we can kind of catapult the future of our existence with all of this technology being released and shared with people openly. We could save a lot of lives. We can make things a lot more safer. But no, the other option was to make more money by spreading out that time, by stealing the time, because in that time is what matters. You can have entire lifetimes, entities living entire lifetimes based upon how spread out the consciousness is, how long it takes for people to get back to their center. Like when you're born and then you're sucked into elementary school and the university system and so on and so forth, you're being sucked away from your center. Like overall, like not necessarily, if you're surrounded by people who are holding on to that space and they're just like, nah, learn what you're going to learn from that world, and then, always stay true to yourself. That's a different world. Not many people are surrounded by that, though, because of the influence of this world. But you're being separated from your consciousness, your relationship from time, in a sense where it's just being spread out to where it's hard to even know yourself. You don't even know who you are, what you are. We think we're our shoes, our clothes, our cars, our jobs, and all that. That's how far it goes. So far to where people even get this sickness to where they got to like mutilate their bodies, all this plastic surgery, implants here, implants there, caking on makeup and, changing this and changing that and doing this. We don't even know what's natural anymore. Like that's all beneficial for the system. Why? Because it slows down, not time, it slows down the evolution of consciousness, which inherently slows down time. And when you slow down time through the level of consciousness of the people, that's when it's not you that's doing anything to the people. It's the system. It's the people who are influenced by the system who are doing it to themselves. So we have been subjected to generations upon generations of parasitic influence. And this parasitic influence looks like the mainstream media. It looks like Stephen Colbert's face. It looks like Donald Trump's tie. It looks like, the Queen of England. It looks like colonialism. It looks like white supremacy. It looks like the prison and military industrial complex. It looks like smallpox blankets. It looks like stealing all the minerals and resources from all these lands and funneling it into the Rothschild and Rockefeller banking industry, and it looks like starting wars for no reason. And that's what all this stuff looks like. And the more and more complex they make that system, the deeper and deeper it is to lock itself into your belief systems or your consciousness and become your reality, and inherently slow down your relationship with time. So when they tell you, oh yeah, we're going to have this president for 4 years, you're like, good, well, at least it's only 4 years. We can get through that. And then all of a sudden, oops, it's 8 years now, because you're not voting for these people. It's happening. They're doing it to you. They're making these moves. So they can do whatever they want with the presidency and the Democrats and Republicans and the legislature, all that stuff. They can do anything they want with those worlds, because you have empowered them to do that with those worlds. So if you've empowered them to take over the world with the illusions of Democrats and Republicans, the Western so-called civilization and all that other nonsense, the military and the prison industrial complex, we've empowered them to do that. So now we've given them that power to do whatever it is that they're going to do with that. And then that means that they can do to us whatever we allow them to do to us, and other, because we've allowed them to do that same thing to other people. This is why I say it's so dangerous for like the New Age community to just act like these worlds don't exist and say, oh, well, we'll just, look the other way, or we'll just love and light. Well, you're looking the other way while drones are dropping bombs on people, while rainforests are being cut down, while oceans are being polluted. You thinking that if you don't pay your energy into it, I'm just not going to pay my focus, and which is energy, to that world, and soon enough it'll go away. Keep telling yourself that. Keep living in that bubble. Keep living in that cloud, because that's exactly what this system banks on. It needs you to be complacent, whether it's through fear, because you don't do anything out of fear, or you don't do anything because you're complacent out of love and light. You don't do anything because you're just so full of love and light, and then that's all you need to do. You just need to wake up and be I am. Wake up and be love. Okay, is it that simple? Do you really think that this world is that simple. If it's that simple, you might as well just go back to sleep. If you can wake up every morning and look at that fortune cookie message that says, just be I am, just be love and light. If that's what the complexities of this world are all about, I'm sorry, but you got to go back to sleep, because it's not. And the system knows that it's not. So it uses the alchemy within this system against the people. It makes it available for the people to use it against themselves. So you have the illusion of freedom. You have the illusion of unity and community and culture and all this other stuff. The mainstream media is an artificial culture. The White House and the United States government, it's an artificial culture. It's all been made up. No different than heliocentrism. This is why I'm saying all this stuff relates to itself. If you really want to get to the nitty gritty of how this system works, it needs to be bulked up with observation, just the truth of what's going on here. They're set in their ways. They're set in their values, which sets them in their consciousness. So the quality is where the wisdom comes in. The quantity doesn't matter, but the world that we exist in today, this mainstream world, is telling you, you don't need to focus on quality of life, quality of consciousness, quality of being. It's about quantity, how much money you have, how many houses you have, cars. These are the values. The knowledge, the governments, the lawyers, the justice, your health, your food, your water. Nature itself is being affected by these individuals creating these programs. So the consciousness is the focus. That's the way they're getting people. Because once you got the consciousness, once you lock down the bridge between the body and the soul, once you lock down the mind, it's going to be a long way out of that hole. And that's why I said the system doesn't really care about time. It'll just steal your time or make you give your time away to these illusions for as long. That's why you have to be bombarded so much by all these distractions, social media, the internet, reproduction programming, like all these online dating sites and all these like TV shows or commercials that are selling you a cheeseburger with a lady in a bikini and like ketchup dripping down her cheek and stuff, stuff like that. Like that's the intent, is to make you think of something that slows down your time on every level. The clock on your soul, the clock on your mind, and the clock on your body, and all the other clocks on all the other bodies, your emotional body clock. Because I say clock in reference to an experience that needs to be overcome before you move into the next level of experience. So just because you get old doesn't mean that you learned whatever you needed to learn in that experience, because a lot of people pride themselves in just being old. Well, it ain't about the quantity. It's about the quality that you put in that time. So everything in this society has been removed of its quality, because if you look at the quality of life, you're looking at the quality of your relationship to that life, which is nature. So what is the relationship that this society has with nature? It's destructive. It's parasitic. So you can't even look at that. So you have to have a shitty quality of life in order for this world to maintain itself. You have to be locked in this upside down and backwards ass system where they tell you one thing, but they're doing another. Because you're caught up in that washing machine. You can't get out of that. You're too busy trying to make ends meet while you're tumbling around and never being able to get out of it. So everything is upside down, backwards. And why things are changing, how I'm seeing is that it seems like things are changing more quickly is because of the information that's available, because of people sharing, not in reference to TYT and Alex Jones and the mainstream media. No, the people themselves, the shit that comes before the actual like the tablet or the laptop or whatever it is. It's the people. It's the consciousness of the people. Like I said, in reference to time, is time really slowing down because you're having a good time, or speeding up because you're having a good time? No, it's the way you're perceiving your experience that's either speeding up or slowing down based upon the experience that's presented to you. So what experience is being presented to us? Look at all these garbage ass illusions. Heliocentrism, global warming, and then they make a joke out of it. So they're victimizing themselves when they make these jokes. When they're talking about Trump and they talk shit about Trump all the time, that's not to entertain you. That's to lull you into victimhood and be okay with being a victim. Because back when Obama was president, you were the aggressor, which is why they could do all that shit. You were happy about this system. You loved it. It was the best thing that ever happened. Everybody was celebrating. That's why Barack Obama could do all of that shit with all those drones. That's why they had to balance it out by giving him the Nobel Peace Prize. That's why they had to, he did more destruction, if not equivalent to Bush, because the people allowed him to do that. See, Bush would have been able to do more if he was more like charismatic and smart and all that, but he wasn't. So people were holding him very accountable and only doing so much. So the system could only do so much based upon the level of consciousness of that individual, that idol, that centerpiece, balanced out with the way the people trusted him, the beliefs they had in him, the value they had in that world. So that's how this world plays, and why your voting doesn't even matter at all, because they're going to do whatever they're going to do based upon how much you let them do. So they did the max they can do with an idiot as a president. So they did it. They started the war on terrorism and just said oops and just hoped people would just not ask any questions about their oops on WMDs and their oops on going to Iraq and their oops on everything else, because they set up 9/11 in the first place. So you're caught up in all those other oops, not even at all questioning the trigger mechanism, the foundation, because of how incompetent he presented himself as, and he was presented by the media as. So the opposite happens for Barack Obama. You don't care. You don't pay attention because you trust him. He's charismatic. He's intelligent. He's trustworthy. And when they have that trust, they got you by the balls and they can do whatever they want. So what that does is that slows down time. Though both of those individuals had 8 years, and it's not at all a surprise. 8 years from one end of the spectrum and 8 years on the other end of the spectrum. And they both worked because they all existed inside the same level of consciousness box, which is the people giving their power away to this system and giving their consciousness away to their trust into this system. And what I'm saying with all these other videos is that nothing is ever going to change until you challenge that level of consciousness that thrives off of blood, death, and destruction. It made its money off of that. And a lot of the people can't get to that point because they trust this place so much. They trust these people so much. And they trust them because they hear them talking about global warming. And subconsciously, they're being played as the victim. It might look powerful and all this other stuff when John Oliver makes a video or tells a joke about Donald Trump, or Stephen Colbert makes a cartoon or whatever about Donald Trump. It may look like that's power and it's like, oh, people coming together and making fun and challenging, and you have the freedom to do that. Some other people don't have that freedom. That's why the whole North Korea thing exists out there, is because they need North Korea. The United States needs people like Kim Jong-un and Gaddafi and everybody else that they have demonized. They need them to make them the superheroes because they have their villain. So by other people having less freedom, it makes your little breadcrumbs of freedom, your little nothing, your little dust freedom, what you consider freedom, it's only a freedom in comparison to. It's only a freedom. See, your freedoms in the United States are only freedom in comparison to worlds, not only worlds that have so-called less freedoms than us, but a lot of those worlds are completely out of balance and destroyed because of the so-called first world putting down their boots on the necks of these so-called third worlds, sucking the life and the resources out of their land, and then priding themselves in it later on down the line, calling themselves first world countries, first world people. This is what happened to the Native Americans and the indigenous people all over the world. They said, we are the first world people. You are just a primitive third world nothing, and you deserve the genocide that we are going to bring down on this land. You deserve this. We are empowered by the word of God. It is a manifest destiny. It is your destiny to fall to this sword. It is your destiny to listen, to follow the words of our God, and to submit to our power, our intellect. And here's why. Because it's not all about, faith in God. Scientifically speaking, you primitives are just so savage that you need to be conquered. We are doing a service for you. That's how they're selling, and they've been selling it for centuries, actually. Centuries, and people been buying it slowly but surely. And if they sell it over time, it's going to sink in. And they make you believe it by taking what was old and painting it as something new and giving you toys and all this other stuff. So global warming, that's a toy. Oh yeah, we're protecting you. NASA talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna get lasers connected, and then we're gonna stop meteors from blowing up the earth. We're gonna have this contingency plan for when aliens come, or when this happens, or this dictator does this. Like they're making you believe in that superhero, and they demonize everything else. And what I'm saying overhand, zoom all the way back out to the beginning of this video. Every single thing that I just mentioned in reference to how this world operates is designed to slow down time, to affect through your values, through your beliefs, through your relationships, through your intellect, through your connections and disconnections. And once you're locked into that, it's hard to dig your way out, because you don't even know who you are, and you're too busy trying to soften up or make nice the world that's around you. And once you're in that world, that's when you completely lose yourself and basically become the living dead. So it's people who are completely living dead and don't even at all entertain this information. They're just whatever. And then you have people in the middle who are defending it. So the people who don't say anything, they're defending it. You're like, silence is compliance. Like they say, well, just scare the shit out of them. Scare them so much that they will go mute and they won't say anything because they're that scared. That's why you have your local news selling you all that destructive programming every day, because subconsciously you shut down. So everything between that mentality and like, that's the lowest of the low, going quiet, going mute. The highest of the high in that same world is getting loud. It's like becoming a politician and defending this for example purposes. So you have the civilian who's just working minimum wage, scared of the government, scared of the police, scared of the world, scared of the universe, scared of space, scared of giant Texas-sized rocks tumbling through the universe, heading our way, and hopefully NASA will build a giant laser or send Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck up there to blow it up. Please protect us. That's what this system is about, and they're playing on that. They played on that with 9/11. And they said, We were hit on our own land. We have to protect you. And everybody's like, yeah, protect us. From who? I don't know. Those guys. Yeah. Let's get Saddam in Iraq and let's do that. Yeah, because we need to, but from who? But protected from who? Why? Oh, Saddam. Yeah, Saddam. Because why? Oh yeah, WMDs. Yeah. No different than this global warming shit. Anybody talking about chemtrails and all this other stuff around there, like, whatever. We got bigger fish to fry, okay? The world is heating up because it's not the corporations, it's you driving your car around and living in this Western world. So this is how it plays it. It victimizes itself, and then it victimizes you, and then everything, it just goes back and forth. And then at the end of the day, what happens? You've been bombarded by a whole slew of information and don't even know how to think for yourself. And the only thing that you can communicate with somebody else is something somebody else had regurgitated on social media or the mainstream media. And then you guys fight over that. And at the end of the day, it was, oh, yeah, good. I love you, bro. I love you, family member. I love you. Whatever it is. It's an artificial reality. You're already living in an artificial reality. This is a virtual reality. And it's a virtual reality because this is the main reason why it's a virtual reality. Because the system needs to focus on the glory of Rome. If it even acknowledges the crimes of Rome, if it says anything about the crimes of Rome, the real history will present itself and it will be revealed for what it is. So they have to celebrate. They got to build you up. They got to pull your heartstrings. They got to even world hunger was even mentioned in this. And it's joking. So it's victimizing you, sucking you in. So as it's building itself up, it's building your ancestors and your world, your true world outside of this virtual reality. It's bringing that down. Scientifically proved, like their belief system, like they call gravity and the theory of relativity, they call those theories facts. When you sit them down and say, is this a theory or is this a fact? They have to say theory. But when they present it to you, and they punk you and they talk shit about you on TV and, in interviews, they say this is fact. But since the television rules the world and social media rules the world and their word rules the world, their facts become your reality. But their facts have always been theories. So any theories that challenge their theories will challenge their grip on your mind, will challenge their control over you. So you can't have any relationships with your ancestors. They have to be called devil worshippers or following whatever it is, like so silly that they'll just worship a plane and all this other. They put stuff out there like this to make you think a certain way about them. But they won't actually go and communicate with people and actually find out their values, understand their consciousness. They won't compare those in public equal to equal. No, they'll say, no, ha 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 ha. Look at this guy. He lives on an island and he saw a plane go by and he thinks the plane is God now. He made a whole religion about it. These guys are that guy is so silly. I'm so glad we live in LA or New York or Miami where it's civilized and we're moving where as human consciousness should. Oh, really? You are? Take a look at the oceans. Take a look at the rainforest. Is it because of them that you're looking at right now? Or is it because of you assholes living in LA, New York, and Miami? And the system that created it. And the system that created it in order to make you think this way about these individuals. What is it? Sure as hell ain't them making all that plastic, putting it in the ocean. It ain't them bombing the other people. Maybe that's the reason why you can't look at their values. You can't go in there. So what happens is that you have people adjusting to this system. So this is where you have what people call coons in the system, or the people defending the system. You have these delegate or these whoever's working in politics or on television, trying to defend it, or even in the black conscious community, trying to defend this economy, talking about we need to just, get black businesses and this and that. I understand that these are all stepping stones and you can move and all this other stuff, but if the entire system is not being addressed, you're going to repeat history. This is no different than than the Black Panther movement being attacked by COINTELPRO and then being washed over or covered over by the fact that they installed the Civil Rights Act into our consciousness, and that was supposed to address everything that was being said. It wasn't. In fact, it did the opposite. It made everything go underground and actually get worse, because when it was out in the open, you could actually see it and you can do something about it. But once it went underground, people started to accept it and defend it. And it's harder to see. So it actually did worse. So this is what's happening nowadays when you have people who are not really informed about how far this system has gone to steal your time, to lock down your consciousness, to trap you in this bubble of self-destructive illusions. So what happens is that we adjust to it. So this is the same thing that happened when the slaves were freed. We got to do what we got to do, man. We got to get a job. We got to survive, man. I got to provide for my family. I got to do this. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. Like if I had kids right now, I'd be working wherever I need to work to provide for my family based upon this world as it's presented to us. I would still constantly share my beliefs and share my understandings of what's going on. But this is another world. I got babies here, I got this and that, so that exists. So what I'm saying is that overall, what people get trapped in is the one world, as if that's the only world that exists. And it's so dense, it's so disgusting that people think that they are that world because they've limited themselves to that world by adjusting to that world, not only in your lifetime, but the generations upon generations before you, hoping that everything's going to be okay, using Christianity as a coping mechanism, like just waiting for Jesus to come back, or just being okay that you gave your life away to the church or Jesus or whatever, and that's going to be okay. It's no different than like the New Age is saying, just give your life away to love and light, and then the aliens will eventually show up and fix everything, or people will eventually raise their consciousness and fix everything. Okay, well, it's not just going to happen on one side of that spectrum. You're going to have to address all of the mind control programs that exist out there. And we can't even allow ourselves to do that because we've spent so many generations learning how to dance to shitty music. That's what's been going on. We've been dancing to a shitty ass DJ that just has been there for so long that, I guess we just got to deal with it. That's just how it is. So what's happening is that people now are starting to say, wait a second, this is not my music. This is your music. It's not my music. And beyond that, this is not even music. This is garbage. Your system is trash. Your universe is trash. Your intelligence, so-called intelligence, is trash. Your idea of justice, health, community, culture, it's trash. It's garbage. It never existed in the first place. You have no relationships with any kind of balances of nature. You have no understanding or interpretation of consciousness. You have no understanding or interpretation of time, or even what this earth is. You have sold illusions to the masses for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's not only about our relationship to nature, it's about our relationship to ourselves, how we interact and engage with time and consciousness and intelligence. And we're no longer going to sit around and just accept your system as the peak of education or intellect, because it's a lie. It's a total lie. That world that is the university system is designed to implode you just enough to not destroy you, but give you just enough spark in that implosion to pride yourself in some kind of movement and take that out into the world and hopefully explode, like expand into something great. But you're trying to expand into a world of implosion with your degree of implosion because you've taken somebody else's idea of the world and have adopted that as your reality. When in fact, that's one way to learn that exists in one world. When the other way to learn in the other world exists based upon you teaching yourself, you tapping into the intelligence and the wisdom of your ancestors and your observations of this reality through your own questioning, through your own education. It's a completely different world. But that world is pretty much taboo. It's demonized. They're doing it with YouTube right now. Oh, would you learn this on YouTube? When in fact, YouTube is just it's a platform that makes information available. So it'd be idiotic to go onto YouTube and believe everything that you see on YouTube. And that's not what people are doing. They're using this as an access point for information. But the bully mentality that's trying to protect itself has to say, oh, well, what are you, just like a YouTube? You learn by yourself? Come on, why don't you learn from the slave masters in the university system who know everything? How dare you challenge that from your YouTube? No, and first of all, it's not even YouTube. It's just like reading what are you, like reading books? You find your own books on Amazon, or you go to the library and find your own books to read? Why would you read some books that you're interested in? Why don't you just read the books that you're told to read like everybody else and be successful? That's the mentality that's being presented. That's how the heliocentric universe is presenting itself to people. That's what they're telling you. Oh yeah, well, you can't think for yourself because everything that you think that you can know has already been known and learned and theorized and put into university books. So stop playing around. So that's one way people adjust. Like I said, you start dancing, you start playing the music of that world, you forget yourself. And once you get so good at dancing in that world, that's when you become that world becomes you, and then you have to defend it. And then that's where the entire system's got everybody by the balls of consciousness. It locked them down. So this is like this image you're looking at right now is one example of adjusting to the world. So yes, you can see this, but at the same time, you can see how this makes sense, but at the same time, what is the end game here? They don't give a shit about you being exhausted. Probably some people are working themselves half to death or to death, and they actually need a nap. You're not looking at that. You're just looking at however it's presented to you. So just like we were talking about, global warming and all this other stuff, it's like this image. It's like, yeah, it's acceptable, but why are people being pushed to that limit? Well, largely the system requests that of people. But yeah, that's the main thing. Nothing gets addressed to the depths. So same thing with this. It's like these shallow layers of interpretation. Like I said, that going back and forth between the bully and the victim, anytime racism comes out, this is how it goes down. They want to bully you into submission by telling you that you need to be grateful for having a cell phone, for having a car, for having what the so-called Western civilization has given to you. They're going to bully you into that. They're going to say, look, you need to be proud of this. Kind of like Alex Jones does in his everyday thing. In the same way TYT does in their pride in the system. That's another way of bullying you. They say, they bully you. But as soon as you stand in your ground and say, now, how was this system created? What is this system doing? How was it created? How did it get to where it is today? Did it just show up because of the sweat off of their brow and hard work? Or are you going to read the entire book of injustices that have been carried out against the majority of people, 9/10 of the people on this earth plane? No, you can't go there. You can't talk about that. You should just move on. Get over it. That's what people are saying when they get into that defensive mode, when they're bullying you and when they're making themselves into the victim. So when you say that, when you say, oh, I'm going to stand in my ground, then they turn themselves into the victim. Oh, whatever. Like, you're going to act like you don't like this and you don't like that. You don't do this and you don't do that. It's like, no, you're missing the whole point. Like this image is showing you right now. When I talk about racism, I'm not talking about the simple ass mainstream version of racism. We're not just saying that. What is the quality of that experience called racism? Not the quantity of how many racists are out there, the quantity of how things have changed from really racism to today's just kind of racism. No, it's only kind of racism to you. To you, the person who has the gall to tell me, who experiences this shit every day. It's only little to you because that's what the world has told you has changed. It hasn't. It's gone underground. Get a few beers and listen, hang out with people here and there. I mean, this has been for as long as I can remember. From my first day in the Army to the last days I got out, both times I got out. I mean, I experienced these kind of racist things both sober and drunk. More drunk because people get more loose with it. But sober and drunk. At work, in the military, this stuff. And because it's been so kind of like pushed to the side by this move on mentality, it's accepted. See, people don't see this now, but the military was like, and still is, it's kind of like 25 years behind in the everyday kind of like personal interactions. But the technology and the use they're using is up to date. They use the soldiers for up to date stuff, but they have you existing in a world that is way behind schedule. So they don't have to hold soldiers accountable for the same stuff that they have to hold civilians accountable for, because soldiers have signed a contract to accept whatever goes on during that time that you're in that contract. Whereas civilians, there's not really a contract there. It's like an invisible contract. It's the contract of your beliefs in that world, which ultimately has the same effect. Because and this is how that's true. There are some civilians that are more proud of their country and this whole world than there are soldiers who are, in that whole pride of America in 1776. And largely because the soldiers know what's up. They know what's going down. They know how this world works. They know exactly what's going on. I knew it when I was in. My friends knew it, and my friends to this day still know, whether they're in or out, because of the way that system is. So in reference to that, like, is that for country, like the army or the military? Is that for the pride of the country? No, that's just making it simple, like saying racism is just about racism. No, like this image says, racist white men who were slave owners were also rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and serial killers. See, that information doesn't want to get addressed. That's like the indigenous information that I said earlier. You can't talk about the quality of that time. You just have to relish in the glory of us not being in that time anymore, supposedly having moved on and evolved out of that old racist time. Like it's just something that happened. Like Chris Rock said, oh, it's just some kind of phase that we went through. No, that's not what racism is. That's a mind control program, and it affects people on every layer of existence. And once we start holding accountable these systems for what they are and what they were, that's when you're going to start to be able to see and unveil a lot of these systems that people hold in, and pride themselves with and protect today. See, the mainstream conversation about racism is just the word racism and black versus white and stuff like that. But when you start talking about the rapists, the inherent rape, the inherent pedophilia that was in there, not to mention that the pedophilia, they were actually also stealing these slave kids and feeding them to alligators, which I mentioned in the previous video, one of them videos. And this is the inhumanity that's in that complex, that's in that consciousness. You think that just because they don't do it as much or they don't do it anymore, you think that it doesn't exist in their psyche? And no, that's not how it works. They want to make you think that it works that way, though, by presenting how wonderful the system is to you. Celebrate, relish in the glory of Rome. If you say one thing about the crimes of this system, you'll be an outcast. And you'll be hit more by the people, your own friends and family. They're going to be the ones that inflict the craziest blows against you when you bring up this information, because they're closest to you. But the thing is, once you start teaming up with friends and family members and start thinking and asking questions on a higher level of observation, that's when you can start actually doing some things. And that's what's happening right now with people who are connecting with all of this information from a perspective of empowerment and acknowledgement and justice, with the intent of constantly expanding and raising the consciousness rather than imploding underneath the systems that are presented to us. Because you can either do one or the other. You're going to explode or implode. Explode or implode, because that's what's happening. That's the chaos of the world. Explode or implode. But once you remove yourself from that world and you remain connected to that world in a sense of detachment. Connected detachment. So you're connected by your heart, by the bridge, but you're not consumed by the illusions that take place in that control grid. That's the only way you're going to really be able to address these systems from a space of maximum potential. Because if you bog yourself down with the illusions, you'll crumble under the weight. But if you remain aware with a level of a detachment from it, so you're knowledgeable, you're informed. Like, I don't watch the mainstream media, I don't watch TYT, but I will, if something's going down, I'll go see where these various mind control programs are telling people to go intellectually, where they're going with their consciousness in order to maintain some kind of awareness. Now that's not required. But for me, it is, because of my art is in interpreting this information and sharing it. So that's what I do. But that's just one way. Other people have their ways, and I know this has worked for me because this information, I couldn't even speak about it a lot or at all in the past because it just weighed me down. And it wasn't that it was too heavy, or it was that I was too weak. I was too, like, I didn't understand like where this information was coming from or how it fit in this system. So just like I was when I was like 17, 18, 19 years old, you just kind of put it to the side and say, well, I'll deal with it when it's time. The same thing people do when they don't want to look at like flat earth information or conspiracy, 9/11 stuff, whatever it is. People say, I don't want to deal with that right now. I'm going to do something else. People do that in order to deal with things in their own time. There's nothing wrong with that. You got to do what you got to do. But if that becomes your world, you yourself will cease to be, and the world will eat you. You will crumble underneath that density. So you have to be, the only way you can have that level of detachment is by having a level of connection to who and what you are outside of the limitations of this physical reality. So a lot of the reasons why people get bogged down by the system and the density within that system is because We haven't, lifted enough soul weights for ourselves to be able to do something with that work. There's nowhere to put it. There's no anchor to pull yourself out of that nonsense, out of that garbage. So you have to anchor yourself in the higher mind, anchor yourself in the soul connections in order to pull yourself out of that density, break all of those illusory connections, and start to realize the stuff for what it really is. So that's where you have that layer of detachment. It's not disconnected, it's a layer of detachment with the awareness that's still there, because you're still there in many different ways. Your brothers and sisters are still there. Your family and friends are still there. And what are you going to do in that scenario? You can do whatever you want. Some people choose to walk away. Some people choose to engage. I choose to engage. But if you're going to choose to do that, you have to do it from a space of health. That's something that's going to be beneficial to your health. And you have to have a layer of detachment that is there, but not in a sense of complete disconnecting. So when we're trapped in that illusion, it affects our values, it affects our beliefs, it inherently affects our consciousness, and that consciousness affects our relationship with time. You have to look at yourself. You have to look at, in order to be able to see things outside of you, you have to at first have been able to see it in yourself, or at least been privy to that kind of experience happening from seeing it before, from somebody close to you or whatever it is, or seeing it in some kind of way. The thing with this system is that to say, oh no, they say not only don't look at it, they tell you that doesn't exist. So that happens with each individual. It's like your power. It's like, no, you're not powerful. You're just a cosmic mistake. You were shot out of the Big Bang. You evolved from a monkey to now. Today, you're the most evolved species in the universe. And just be proud of that. Just be proud of that, and don't rock the boat. Don't ask any questions. Just be proud of that. And let us run the world. Let us just control everything around you, because you need us to do that. It's like, all right, whatever you say, boss man. Simulation theory, transhumanism, all this quantum stuff, like they got their things in place. They got CERN in place. They got all their questions that they're getting ready to go out, and string theory and interdimensional travel with the alien agenda. You got the New Agers with the alien agenda, and information coming through channelers from another dimension, another time frame. Like, just imagine with the pieces on the board, what are they going to do with those pieces on the board? They got the alien agenda in the New Age community. They got channelers in the New Age community. They got channelers at the United Nations. They have quantum theory out there. They got CERN talking about breaking interdimensional portals and letting in monsters and all this other shit. They got your belief in the Illuminati or whatever being involved in that with their ritualistic dances at the CERN program and all that shit. All these countries involved in that. They got North Korea. They already took out Gaddafi. They got war. North Korea is going to handle people on that level of consciousness. You got Trump's going to handle people on that level of consciousness. You got TYT, Alex Jones. You got all these distractions out there. For what? To maintain your level of consciousness in the box that they presented for you. So you don't think for yourself. And even if you were thinking that you're thinking for yourself, you're thinking about information presented by them. Having the illusion of thinking for yourself. You're not. The only time you're thinking for yourself is when you're thinking from a space of uprooting the entire system of illusions that have been presented to us over however many generations. It's not going to be all about the information that's presented to you. It's mostly going to be about you sucking up that information the way it's presented to you, and not thinking for yourself.